Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, as the anniversary of the terrible events of June 1984 approaches, we discuss the sovereignty rally planned in California, amongst many other events marking the occasion, and why the memorial of honouring victims of the 1984 genocide is so important. And talking of 1984, the British government is now under increasing pressure to honour its pledge to launch its inquiry into British involvement in Operation Blue Star. Is Starmer listening? Well, there's always a first time. Meanwhile, in Canada, the Sikh community remains on edge after the murder of Harjit Singh Dada. It turns out the existence of Indian crime gang extortion rackets against Sikhs is much larger than first realised. And in India, Sikh organisations unite to successfully remove a 26 million subscriber Hindu YouTube channel's video portraying a twisted history of Sikhi. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and a lot to get through tonight, but at the end, of course, as always, we will be looking at comments by our valued viewers, which are all of you who are watching the show. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to keep your amazing comments coming. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed, and James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And indeed, do stay tuned for the end of the show when we'll cover loads of your great comments. Right, James, lots to get through, as always indeed today. So what are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, it appears that the waves are still rolling and crashing into the shore, as they say. Right now, there is a heightened concern in British Columbia, and we're talking thousands of kilometers away from where the murder of Harjit Singh Dada had been killed in Mississauga, Ontario. Now, essentially what is happening at this point is there is a big influx of information coming out. People are speaking out about the extortion issues and how bad it really is. It appears that through the media and law enforcement agencies, the problem has been much unreported. This is something that we've covered over the last couple of nights, talking about this particular story, but also the broader impact of the Bishnoi gang and others that have their tentacles reached out and threatening violence. There's been gunshots. There's been, as we said, there's been the recent killing of Harjit Singh Dada last week, and it is concerning. Now, of course, events like this are actually not going to help in terms of bringing voices to the forefront. People are concerned. This is a very public, daytime, brazen shooting of a business leader in Mississauga. This only goes to quell fear, instill fear in others that the threats are more than veil idle threats. They are actually threats of action that will be taken against individuals who fail to pay the demanded ransoms and extortions. Now, this has been going on for several years. We've been reporting on this, both Angus and myself, as well as others. However, has it really gotten any better? According to the community, they say no, it hasn't. They have lost faith to some degree in the RCMP and municipal forces in dealing with these threats. They feel that not enough arrests have been made. They also feel that issues such as the sentencing guidelines tie the hands of judges instead of actually punishing those responsible with much harsher penalties, and criminal convictions and sentencing guidelines prevent the maximum from being doled out. This, of course, is a concern when we see that this is a crime that's taking place via telephone, via email, via in-person threats, and yet there still seems to be so many individuals involved in the criminality that the police have not made a dent in it. Now, of course, we talked about last night the Peel Regional Police bringing in new technology to help with their efforts, but also their cry to the federal government to offer more resources, more federal communication and cooperation, as well as regional partnerships across the nation. The RCMP does have a gang task force and organized crime task force, but it seems to be lacking in terms of their ability to crack down and catch these perpetrators as it's going. Now, of course, we know that the notorious Bishnoi gang has claimed responsibility for the murder of Mr. Dada. And it was specifically Rohit Godara who claimed the responsibility and alleged that Dada was targeted for purportedly assisting Arshtala, a leader of, they allege, the Khalistan Tiger Force in securing bail. So again, it is a combination of misinformation, of unverified claims and unverified associations that they put out from the Bishnoi gang, from the Indian media, coming out, of course, representing the Modi government. Now, why would they do that? Well, it's simple. They want to create division within the communities, create distrust amongst various different diasporas, and of course put the threat out there to try and intimidate those who are campaigning for Khalistan and a sovereign nation for Sikhs. This is, again, the concerns that protection money is being paid, and for those that we've learned about, such as Mr. Dada failing to pay the $500,000, which was demanded. He stood firm in his principles and his beliefs. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, the Canadian law enforcement failed him miserably and his family. Now, Jazz Ora in Abbotsford, here on the west coast, just minutes away from Surrey, BC, says that he has faced more than 25 extortion attempts and has recounted terrifying incidents where an extortionist during a phone call mockingly stated that police would be ineffective. And this was while a police officer was in the room with Mr. Aurora on the phone. It's just the brazenness and their lack of respect for law, for any type of law enforcement. And of course, now we know that there could be deadly consequences as a result of not paying these extortion fees. And again, people are calling on the government to do more. BC Conservative member of the Legislative Assembly, or MLA, Steve Cousineau, has called on the provincial government to take immediate action, highlighting that these are not isolated incidents, but rather a coordinated campaign of intimidation targeting British Columbians. He's urged measures such as anonymous multilingual reporting hotlines, quicker convictions, and increased penalties for organized crime extortion. And again, that's something important that Angus, you and I have been talking about quite often, is being able to connect with the communities who may be first-generation Canadians and don't understand the language or don't have the confidence to report to the police. So if they can bring this system into a multilingual medium for people to understand and be able to communicate more, I think that that will definitely help. It's something that we've covered in the past. But again, these criminal organizations, a lot of them are reportedly happening and being controlled by people in India, such as Lawrence Bishnoi, who is locked in jail but seems to be getting a lot of leniency in terms of his ability to run his criminal enterprise internationally from his jail cell, Angus. So again, it's having a ripple effect across the nation, and we need to really work together as all communities to come forward to support those who are being extorted and to make sure that our police departments are providing the protection that they deserve. Now, while the task forces such as the Peel Regional Police Extortion Investigative Task Force and a national RCMP task force have been established to combat these threats, community members express frustration over perceived lack of tangible results and continued vulnerability they face. Now, the murder of Harjit Singh Dada serves as a stark, tragic reminder of the urgent need for comprehensive and effective measures to protect innocent lives from the reach of these organized crime individuals and extortionists. And let's also keep in mind that, you know, it is very targeted, and it very easily could have been Mr. Dada with his family or anybody else. So it is not isolated to one individual, Angus. It is a concern for every member of our communities.
Indeed, and it is, of course, tragic for the community to. I mean, it's hard enough just living through life ordinarily, but to face these criminal gangs extorting your any chance of you having any success, it really does. It really does put the fear of what's it up to, I guess, most of the community who are trying to build businesses. legally and normally. I think it's interesting that the rise in reporting of these crimes is on the rise. And I think there's almost a safety in numbers argument here, where people are thinking, ordinarily they won't report it because they're too afraid to report it. But when they hear others reporting it, then of course there's that safety in numbers angle, and people do start thinking, well, my neighbours report it, so I'll report it too. So I think there'll be an element of that, why suddenly it is on the rise. I think I think the key element of this story is it's all about reporting. It's all about essentially hate crime reporting. And this is a huge area where the Sikh community here in the UK, particularly Sikh organisations, have really focused on. In terms of pushing political agendas and policies, is trying to get hate crimes reported. It's trying to encourage people to report hate crimes, whether it is the real sharp-end criminality, the transnational oppression, the murders, the attacks, the physical assaults, or just down to the lesser, just simple verbal assaults, whatever it is. But these crimes have to be reported because governments and authorities cannot do anything about it if they're not aware of it, if they can't collect the data. They need to know the numbers, they need to know the statistical analysis of what's happening, where it's happening, why it's happening, who's perpetrating it. Then they can define and create policies to deal with it. And this is why the Sikh community, despite an inherent fear of authority, and a justified fear of authority in many cases, but this is why the communities must try and get over that barrier, that fear of authority and fear of law enforcement, and actually report these hate crimes. And even if they think, they'll do nothing about it, the point is, if the infrastructure is finally put in place, as it is here in the UK, finally falling into place, that there are specific buckets, let's call it statistical buckets, where these crimes can be reported into, then these statistics can be collated and then passed up the chain to the policymakers. If people can then contribute to that, if they will report the hate crimes, then indeed these statistics, the data can be collected. The analysts can look at the data and say, right, this is the specific problems, or these are the specific problems. This is what we need to do about it. And then that goes into the hands of the politicians, and they can then formulate policies to deal with it. But this can only happen if these crimes are reported. So in many ways, it is a good thing that the community, certainly in Canada, in BC, are increasingly reporting these crimes, because it means the RCMP can pass up the statistics, their analysts can pass the statistics to the politicians, who in turn can then write the legislation, install the infrastructure, the legal infrastructure and the social infrastructure to deal with it. And then, of course, we have the political angle to this, the anti-khalistan element to this. And it is indeed, it is the proxy crime gangs of the Indian government, whether it's the Bishnoi gang or others. We do know, and reports and evidence does appear, that the Indian government, the Hindu forces, are using criminal gangs as proxies to undertake transnational oppression. And again, this is where it's really important that if there is any anti-khalistan element to any of these hate crimes, that in turn is reported and staticized, if that is a word, that that is interpreted in statistics, and the political angle, the anti-khalistan angle, is also reported, because then again the Canadian authorities can say, yeah, clearly there is an element of political transnational oppression here, and again that feeds into the government policy to prevent transnational oppression, particularly against the Sikh community. So yeah, Jez, I think there is a bigger story to this. It's not just, sadly, a local extortion racket. It does point to a much wider issue here. It is a political issue, and of course, as we said yesterday, it can really only be treated at a national scale, not a local scale. It needs national policies, and indeed stretching across from Canada's perspective into America, into the US, because the FBI, of course, are heavily onto this as well. That there has to be that international angle, that international tie-up of law enforcement to tackle this international problem, James.
Absolutely. And we know that the Canadian RCMP, as well as even Peel Regional Police, have spent a lot of time working cross-border initiatives with the FBI and other law enforcement in the United States. But whether or not each agency is sharing the full depth of the details is another question, because we know that law enforcement agencies, even between, say, the FBI and the LAPD or vice versa, there tends to be that animosity and a lack of information sharing. So I can only imagine that it is even on a grander scale when it comes to international law enforcement and trying to share data and investigation results. So again, we'll keep a close eye on this, Angus, but we encourage people to reach out to their local police departments or the RCMP federal headquarters if you do feel at risk, if you have been threatened or extortion attempts have been made against you. As you pointed out there, Angus, that yes, when people do come together and multiples report, then it helps to bring a community together to feel safer in numbers. But my concern is that as the incidents that have been reported have gone up, now we see the death of Mr. Dada. Is that a message being sent by the Lawrence Bishnoi gang and others warning people that, they've got to stop speaking out and whether or not that'll work? So again, that is definitely concerning as well. As I said before, the Sikh community stands for all, for those who are being oppressed, for those who are being subjugated to violence or threats. And now it's time for us to come together and support them in the way that they do for others around the world every single day. And on that note, Angus, we're going to take a look at something else across the border and talking about around the world. We're going to talk about something coming up on June the 7th in San Francisco. And that is a massive event that the Sikh community would like to invite all members of the community out to take part in. And that is a Sikh sovereignty rally that will commemorate historical tragedies and also celebrate the resilience and the longevity of the Sikh community. Now, on June the 7th, there will be a big event, and it looks to be a significant gathering point for the Sikh community and allies as a major sovereignty rally takes place there. The event is meticulously organized to honor the enduring spirit of Sikh faith, serving as a poignant commemoration of the two profoundly impactful historic events, and that being 1606 martyrdom of Sri Guru Arjan Sahib Ji and the 1984 attack on the Golden Temple, infamously known as Operation Blue Star. Now, the rally seeks to illuminate these historical injustices and underscore the ongoing quest for Sikh self-determination and human rights. The selection of June the 7th for this rally is particularly significant as it aligns very closely with the historical martyrdom of Guru Arjan Dev Ji in 1606, which happened in the month of June, as well as it not being arbitrary because it represents a deliberate act of connecting contemporary advocacy with foundational moments of sacrifice in Sikh history. The annual commemoration of Guru Arjan Dev Ji's martyrdom, a tradition observed every June since 1606, highlights how historical trauma and resilience are deeply woven into the fabric of the Sikh collective and the memory, as well as creating a powerful symbol of enduring remembrance and resilience that transcends centuries. And it's not too often we see events being celebrated or honored and memorialized for centuries, let alone decades. It is just really a show of the dedication. Now, organizers have extended a very warm welcome to people of all faiths to join in solidarity. This explicit invitation is a direct manifestation of core Sikh values, aiming to broaden support and counter any potential misrepresentations or misperceptions of the sovereignty movement, and that is not exclusive. As Sikhism fundamentally upholds the equality of all humankind and practices an open-door policy in its places of worship. Now, this is a larger article, so I'm not going to read it all, but I will just point out a couple of other important points of interest. And that, of course, is Sri Guru Arjan Sahib Ji, born in 1563, He ascended to become the fifth Sikh guru in 1581. His leadership was marked by profound contributions that solidified the foundations of Sikhism. Notably, he was responsible for compiling the Adi Granth, the central holy scripture of the Sikh faith. This sacred text meticulously includes hymns from the preceding gurus, his own compositions, and spiritual verses from 32 other saints, thereby emphasizing universal spiritual truths. Now, we can look at the history and the major impact in which that he had, and of course, we can also look at his major role in establishing the Golden Temple in Amritsar. But more importantly, we also look at the fact that in 1606, Emperor Jayahargir issued the order for Guru Arjan Dev Ji to be tortured and killed after the Guru steadfastly refused to abandon his spiritual message. He endured 5 days of an unimaginable torment, and that was including being forced to sit on hot sheets while boiling hot sand was poured over his body. Following the brutal ordeal, he was taken for a bath in the river, and he was never seen again. And so again, this goes into more detail, but in the interest of time, I just want to touch briefly on those incidents that are such an important factor in this June 7th event in San Francisco. Now, of course, we know that it also ties in with the memorial in remembrance of the victims of Operation Blue Star and the violence and genocide of 1984. So with all of that combined together, the event will start to celebrate and honor these individuals at 10 a.m. at 88 2nd Street in San Francisco. Again, events will start at 10 a.m. It's estimated that at approximately 12 noon, the group will march through the streets of downtown San Francisco, ending up at the City Center Plaza. Now, upon arrival there will be different events taking place, including people speaking to the audience, whether it is prominent members of the Sikh community, human rights activists, as well as local politicians, and others will address the crowd to discuss Sikh sovereignty, but also about human rights issues that are such a prominent news story right now, not only in India and Punjab, but around the world. It is very timely, and of course we know that Sikhi is not about just the people of Sikh faith, but they represent the human rights of all individuals around the globe, as we so often say. Now, again, this will take place in San Francisco, June the 7th at 10 a.m. Again, the address for the starting point is 88 2nd Street, and it will move from there at 12 noon, going through the streets of downtown San Francisco to the City Center Plaza, where there will be a lot of other events and guest speakers from 2 until 4 p.m. We encourage you to get out, to be a part of this, to stand tall, to stand shoulder to shoulder with our friends of Sikh faith, and to commemorate the lives that were given, not only to bring Sikh sovereignty, but also in the history of trying to hold world leaders accountable for genocides that are created and happen against their own people, Angus.
Yes, indeed. And rallies like this are so important because ultimately, what is the purpose of a rally? It is to be seen and to be heard. It is trying to send a message to your audience. Who is the audience? Well, the public at large and to politicians. So it's imperative that as many people as possible turn up to this event. And of course, there are other events happening all around the diaspora as well, even here in the UK. Yes, certainly I would urge all our audience, if you are able and capable, get out there, get seen, get heard, join the rallies, because only then can the wider public understand, firstly, that you exist, secondly, what your message is, and thirdly, they can help you. If they agree with your message, they will align with you and they will add their weight to that overall message to the politicians to say, right, you need to act, you need to acknowledge, you need to change policies, whatever it is that these processions, these rallies are all about. And of course, this rally particularly reflects not just a very rich and interesting history of the Sikh people, but also the terrible, relatively recent events 41 years ago in 1984, where, of course, there were a dreadful sequence of events. We had the Harmandir Sahib, also the Darbar Sahib massacre, and Bhindranwale and his colleagues who fought that heroic last stand. And then, of course, in November of that year, the dreadful genocide in which tens of thousands of innocent men, women and children, Sikhs, were murdered, tortured and murdered in the streets by rampaging mobs. So these events must never be forgotten. So that is why events like this are just so critical, that people remind the world and actually even educate the public at large for the first time. They might never have heard of this. I certainly never recalled this event, even though I was relatively young, but I never heard of this event of 1984, yet I certainly know about it now. And there's whole huge populations in all our respective countries that are not aware of what happened to the Sikh people in 1984 and indeed the following years, the genocides that followed. So it is imperative that as many people as possible turn up to these events and remind the wider public of why you are there, why you are standing in public, out in the fresh air and chanting and singing, dancing, whatever it was. I suppose that's slightly inappropriate, but certainly whatever activities these events do portray, it is reminding and telling and informing and educating the people, this is who we are, this is what we have suffered, this is why you need to align and join with us in trying to make a wider public aware, and of course the politicians more importantly aware, which of course is what I'm going to talk about in a moment, James. But yes, certainly I urge everybody, get out there, get involved, take your khalistan flags if you have them. If you haven't got one, get one, and make sure that khalistan flag is bright and visible in these rallies, because again, that is an important message to send to the wider world, that the movement is growing and that this whole 1984 movement is really one of the foundation stones of the Khalistan movement. It is why Khalistan is so justified today, James.
Absolutely. And as we get closer to June the 7th, we do encourage our audience, if you are at events that may be promoting the rally or other remembrance of the various injustices against Sikhs in the past, please feel free to share photos and videos and share your stories with us, because again, we look to our audience to participate in the show as well, so that we can learn from you as much as we hope some people are learning new things about Sikhi and about the history, culture, and of course the amazing people. So again, please feel free to share links, photos, videos, or your individual stories with us, as we do appreciate it and look forward to interacting with our audience. And back to you, Angus.
Indeed. Okay, and that sort of follows on very conveniently into my first story. And of course, yes, here in the UK, as in all around the diaspora, there are going to be all sorts of events and rallies to highlight those terrible events of 41 years ago in 1984. And as I say, UK is no exception to this. And to coincide with this, one of our major organisations, one of our most powerful lobbying organisations, the Sikh Federation UK, has actually launched a video in the last 24 hours just to remind the world of what this is all about. Let me just quickly play this for you now.
In January 2014, Pat McFadden, currently the Cabinet Office Minister and close confidant of Sir Keir Starmer, after meeting the Cabinet Secretary, told The Guardian,
"No one should underestimate the degree of pain which still exists in the Sikh community about these events in 1984, partly because of the belief that the full truth has never been told. I stress to the Cabinet Secretary the importance of telling the full truth about any UK involvement, and that anything less would simply feed a sense of suspicion and mistrust."
Sikhs hope Pat McFadden has shared these strong views with the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary, who are currently deciding how to honour Labour's promise of the full truth. "We have made clear this must be a judge-led public inquiry to deal with any suspicion and mistrust. If Labour lets Sikhs down by failing to deliver the full truth, this will have a multi-generational impact on support for Labour, as Sikhs will never forget how they were betrayed."
So that word betrayal again, I mean, how often has this word betrayal had to be applied to the Sikh community? There's just a constant layer of betrayals. Almost every decade there's yet another betrayal. And here we are in the 2020s, and the Labour government, and of course there's a large reference there to the Labour government who are now in power here in the UK, they were elected partially with a huge thanks to the Sikh community. The Sikh community tend on the whole to support the Labour Party. We do now have, is it 11 or 12 Sikh MPs in the Labour Party. And so therefore there is this moral obligation, and indeed a democratic obligation, on the Labour Party to honour pledges that they gave whilst in opposition to launch various inquiries, one of which of course included this 1984 inquiry, because in 2014 it was revealed as some documents were declassified and almost accidentally information was revealed that the British government of the time in 1984, it was a Conservative government led by Margaret Thatcher in 1984 at that time, that the British government did provide assistance to the Indian government related to Operation Blue Star. What we don't know is specifically what assistance was provided. What we do know likely is that the SAS, the British Special Forces, were consulted and did provide military input, military advice to the Indian military on how to attack the Darbar Sahib, how to extricate Bhindranwale and his followers from the Darbar Sahib. As it turned out, I think, if I'm correct in remembering, that allegedly that advice was a very precise stroke, a typical SAS, let's say, operation to fly in, extricate him, and then remove very quickly without causing any other collateral damage. Which, of course, that if that was the advice, it was wholeheartedly ignored by the Indian military, who instead launched 1,000 troops and a line of tanks just to blast the Darbar Sahib to pieces and massacre tens of thousands of innocent men, women, and children who were there on a pilgrimage at the time. So, but ultimately, the British government does have questions to answer. Certainly from that time, the British establishment has questions to answer, and this is why the Sikh Federation UK are now pressuring once again on the anniversary of those events in June 1984, to say to Starmer, our Prime Minister, when you were in opposition, you promised us a judge-led inquiry. Now that's important. A judge-led inquiry is important. It's not just a public inquiry. It has to be led by a judge. Why is that important? Because a judge has the power to call in the security services, the intelligence services, in our situation MI5 and in some cases MI6, who are more dealing with the international affairs. So MI5 and MI6 would be called in and to provide evidence. Now it will be held in camera. That means in private, confidentially. So it will not be publicly heard, because of course it relates to the intelligence services. But importantly, a judge will hear evidence from the intelligence services, and the intelligence services will of course be obliged, but of course more willing to provide that evidence, because they know it will be politically sensitive, or it will be publicly sensitive, and they know that the public will not be allowed to see that evidence, but a judge can see it and therefore make a valid and objective ruling. And that is why a judge-led inquiry is so important, and that is why the Sikh Federation UK are pushing very, very hard for this judge-led inquiry. Now, as I said, Starmer in opposition promised, you elect me to become Prime Minister, you elect the Labour government, elect the Labour Party to become the government, we will give you this judge-led inquiry. Well, they've been in power now for, it'll be a year in 2 months. Where is this public inquiry? Where is any mention of it? Of course, it's conveniently forgotten, as indeed Jagtar Singh Johar has seemed to have been conveniently forgotten by our Labour government. And again, coming back to this word betrayal, yes, thank heavens there are some decent Labour MPs, at least with the honour to try and remember their pledges they gave to their electorates, their voters. Yes, the Sikh community who voted them into power, at least some of them have had the honour still and the memory to go up to their boss, Keir Starmer, and say, look, you made this promise. I think it's about time you delivered on it. Otherwise, as per that video, this betrayal is not going to be forgotten. We will be thrown out of power in 3 or 4 years' time, and they will not support us in the future, because once again, we will have betrayed the Sikh community. And Sikhs do not forget this. Remember, this is 41 years after 1984, and the Sikh community are still bubbling swelling with anger, with tumultuous anger. 41 years after that event, I can guarantee you, Labour Party and Keir Starmer, if you betray the Sikh community now, as currently you seem to be doing so, the Sikhs will not forget this. Sikhs will carry this for years and decades. They will remember this betrayal, and the Labour Party will lose the Sikh vote for decades to come. So this is a warning to the Labour Party. I doubt many of the Labour Party are watching this, but if you are, I strongly suggest, if you ever want to keep the Sikh community's vote, you better deliver this time. You better deliver this judge-led inquiry into the events of 1984. You better deliver the efforts to free Jagtar Singh Johal, plus many of the other issues that the Sikh Federation UK and the Sikh community as a whole are lobbying you for. That is why the Sikh community elected you. That is why they gifted you their votes. You better deliver or else. James.
Absolutely, Angus, and it's all about follow through, and that's one of the problems that we have. We don't expect our politicians to follow through in a lot of cases, unfortunately, and of course they know that, so therefore they try to avoid some of the more polarizing issues, as we say. And as a result, they try to just overlook certain things, saying, oh, well, you know, we had other pressing issues. But again, what is more pressing than what is important to your voter base? I mean, just plain and simple. But also not even looking at the voter base. What is more important than human rights and investigating what the truth is behind such actions, such as the genocide, such as, you know, these many atrocities that have happened over the years. But they made a commitment. They need to follow through on it and to have that inquiry. Now, I also think that we're going to see a lot more of this debate and putting them on the hot seat as we come up again to the 40th anniversary of Air India flights that unfortunately are still questionable as to whether they were false flag actions or where that came from. So I think that there's still a lot of emotion that's going to be brought up, not only in this instance, but others in which people just feel they haven't had their voices heard and they haven't gotten the answers, the honest truth of the matter, Angus, and we'll have to watch how it plays out.
Indeed, and of course a reminder about 1984 rallies here in the UK on the 1st of June, Sunday the 1st of June, there will be similarly a rally in London in Trafalgar Square. As in last year, where I think 25,000 turned up. Huge rally, great turnout, and I urge all those here in the UK, turn up to Trafalgar Square on the 1st of June, Sunday the 1st of June. Get out there and be heard. And again, let's apply this pressure on the government to deliver on its promises. And James, as we often say, our politicians, we hold them in such a dim view, and rightly so. It would make a nice, pleasant change if for once some politicians actually delivered on their promises. Right, on that note, let us change subjects completely. And this is, and I do chuckle slightly about this. I shouldn't really, because it is a serious story, but the word hapless springs to mind. This is a hapless Hindu who's really incurred the wrath of the Sikh community. This is a guy called Dhruv Rathi. Now, Dhruv Rathi is a YouTuber in India. And of course, like many in India, of course, having a population of 1.4 billion, it's very easy to get a massive following. And this guy does indeed have a massive following. It's something like 29 million subscribers, numbers that I think we can only dream of, James, sadly. But so this guy has 29 million subscribers, obviously primarily in India. And he produces all sorts of videos about lots of varied subjects. And he actually released just a few days ago a video about the Sikh community, but also about the history of Sikhi. And he produced this video, and it created a massive backlash, particularly from the Sikh community. And this guy, he had to pull down his latest videos. And what it was, it depicted the lives of Guru Gobind Singh Ji and Banda Singh Bahadur. But he also did it, and this is where it really went wrong, he did it through AI-generated animation. Now, Why would that create such a backlash? Well, any portrayal of Sikh gurus and their family members is banned officially by the SGPC. And certainly, even we're aware that you must never show any depiction of a guru. It is deeply offensive to the sensitivities of the Sikh community. And this guy, whether deliberate or ignorance, and this is why I use the word hapless, I think it was primarily out of ignorance. He's created this video, this animation, where he has depicted the guru and members of the guru's family, but particularly using AI to do so. Now, Guru Gobind Singh Ji was, of course, the 10th and the last living guru. And Banda Singh Bahadur, he was a Hindu who converted to Sikhism under the tutelage of Guru Gobind Singh. And he actually rose to become a warrior who fought the Mughals. So again, a very heroic figure. And again, as we often say, it's such rich, fascinating history of the community that is always makes a great story. And of course, this YouTuber and YouTubers are always looking for material that would interest their audience. And of course, this lad has found this story and thought, yeah, great story. And I think this lad, again, it's just I think, with all due respect to him, he's just a simple Indian. He happens to be a Hindu and thought, yeah, I love my country. I want to tell the story of our history. And unfortunately, he's waded into an area where he really should not have waded. And he's, to use the phrase, he's stuck his hand into a hornet's nest and he's been stung pretty badly. So as a result, on his channel, he had to send out a message a couple of days ago saying, look, I'm withdrawing this video, primarily because he did not want to turn it into a political or religious controversy. As he said, thank you for your feedback. Even though many of you appreciated the video and would like it to stay on the channel, he decided to remove it because some viewers feel strongly that any animated depiction of the gurus conflicts with their belief. And as he said, I don't want this to become a political or religious controversy because the video was simply an effort to showcase the stories of our Indian heroes in a new educational format. And as I said, it was a 25-minute video, and he depicted the early life of Guru Gobind Singh Ji after his father, Guru Tegh Bahadur, was executed by the Mughals. And then it goes on to narrate the life of the Guru and his battle. There's incredible battles and heroic battles with the Mughals, which again is why it made such a great story, in which he lost tragically his 4 sons. And the second half of the video is on the life of Banda Singh Bahadur. And as I said, what particularly upset the viewership was the video was AI generated. Now, as a result of this, and as I say, it created enormous backlash, this storm of anger from the Sikh community, even to the extent where Harmeet Singh Kalka, who's the president of the Delhi Sikh Gurdwara Management Committee, the DSGMC, he actually wrote a very formal, very official letter to the cyber crime cell, this part of the Indian government that oversees the media. It's equivalent to Ofcom here in the UK. But basically, he wrote this very strongly worded letter, very official letter to the cyber crime cell, saying, look, you've got to see this video and you must take action about it. And he explained at length about why it was offensive. He talked about the use of AI-generated visuals to depict our revered Sikh gurus. And as he said, it's an act that is strictly prohibited and considered a grave violation of Sikh religious principles. So he then explains why it was so offensive. He explains also, and importantly, it wasn't just the portrayal of the gurus that was offensive. It also contained a lot of factual inaccuracies and misleading interpretations that misguide the viewers about Sikhism's true values, its history of sacrifice, and the deep-rooted spiritual legacy of the gurus and the warriors. And then he explains specifically under which legal platforms it can be denied under, it can be removed. Section 299 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita Act, or whatever, excuse my pronunciation, that was a dreadful pronunciation, but whatever. And again, a long list of legislation that it actually breaches. And then his final call to action is to say, look, please do take necessary, in fact, it doesn't even use the word please, it just says you better or else take necessary legal action to prevent further dissemination of the offensive video, etc., etc. So it was a very, very strongly worded letter from the Delhi Gurdwara Committee. And again, James, as I said at the beginning, it has clearly really offended the Sikh community, this, and we do know that any portrayal of the gurus is really offensive to the community. And all I would say from I can't say I'm entirely objective in this, but I would say in this lad's defence, he's just a simple YouTuber. I don't believe, and certainly looking at the material that he produces, I do not believe that he is a leading figure of Hindutva, not like, let's say, Major Araya, who we do know is just a simple mouthpiece of Hindutva to drive anti-Sikh propaganda. This guy is just a simple Indian YouTuber, just making, obviously, a very good living, but he's just trying to find material. He's clearly a very proud Indian. He believes in India and his nation. You can't blame him for that. He's flying his nation's flag. But unfortunately, I think through probably more ignorance than malice, I think he's just waded into an area he really should have researched a little bit more. Clearly, I suppose like many of us, he's always up against the pressure of time to produce videos and material, but he's not understood and researched the area that he has portrayed. The video has, as a result, been withdrawn. He has apologised. And, well, I think life goes on, but let it be a lesson to other people, other YouTubers, particularly from the Hindu sides. And again, we're not anti-Hindu here, but just a respective message to the Hindus in India. Please just be a little more careful when you tread on the toes of the Sikhs, because you need to understand the history that Sikhs have a very long history of suffering particularly under Hindu authority. So please just be a little bit more careful and a little bit more respectable and a little bit more sensitive to if you ever try to portray the history of the Sikhs. James.
Absolutely, Angus, and we know, being pasty white guys, you know, it is a learning curve, and it is something that in most religions and most faiths, it would not be seen as a negative to show the images if you are doing so with the intent to educate, raise awareness, and to bring together cultures. But this particular instance is very clear. It's something that you and I are aware of. And but again, we had to learn that. And unfortunately, with the new technology of AI, many people are relying on AI to police itself. And unfortunately, that is not the case, and that is not how it works. AI can be a wonderful tool to help, but again, it has to remain as a tool, not as a replacement for the work, for the research, for the editorial review that you've got to conduct of yourself, and make sure that you are acting within the confines of respecting whatever the story is that you are portraying. And in this case, of course, it meant, you know, you should have looked at what the offense or the potential ramifications of using AI to generate or replicate perceived images of the guru. So again, I don't think it was intentional. I think that it was just unaware, uneducated, and again, he did respect the community by pulling it down as soon as he was made aware of the issue. So again, I just think that it's a learning opportunity for everyone, including all of the influencers out there, Angus.
Indeed. And I think we do have an element of sympathy for this guy, this hapless Hindu, as I called him, because it is so easy, particularly from a completely different culture. It is very easy to get it wrong, as indeed James and I have on the odd occasion. And fortunately, our wonderful audience have been very kind and very quietly, politely pointed out where we've got it wrong. So thank you to our audience whenever you've done that. And I think certainly, I think this guy really just, I think he's probably waking up the following morning thinking, oops, I better not do that one again. Yes, indeed. So let's move on now to our comments column. And as always, wonderful reams of comments from our audience on all sorts of issues. And sadly, we can only pick a few, but certainly loads from our regulars as always. Thank you to our regulars, but also some new names have appeared. Thank you to those who have contributed. Every comment is read and appreciated. So do keep them coming in, even if they're just short or whatever. But anyway, TC, certainly one of our regulars, kicks us off and says, look, this is about the referendum. In the interest of democracy, look, and this comes back to how often we get critics who say it's just a fringe movement, this whole Khalistan movement. There isn't support amongst the Sikh community about it. Well, as TC reminds us yet again, as people clearly need reminding, all you need to do to solve this is an objective referendum. Quite simply, as TC says, ask the people to vote on this fair and square. And as I say always, every time, in return is saying, if the critics are right, you can prove us, you can get rid of us overnight simply by holding a referendum. Prove us wrong, and that's it. We're gone forever. Easy peasy, James.
Well, I wouldn't say we'd be gone forever, but we definitely would be moving on to other topics. Can't get rid of us that easy, Angus.
In fact, you're absolutely right, because I only need to look at the Scottish independence campaign, who were well and truly beaten in our referendum, and yet those guys are still there. Well done to them. I have to say I'm a unionist, but I have total respect for the Scottish independence movement, because they're clearly passionate, as we indeed are, about Khalistan. So you have to respect their views. And undo everything. Yeah, is a new trend maybe. If India can't trust their own people, it is India now. The India we knew ain't anymore. So everyone read and write India from now on, James. It is the end of India. Let's call it India.
And I don't think it's so much about India not being able to trust the people. I think it's the people not being able to trust the government of India. I think it's, a play on it, but I think it's realistic to look at it from that angle as well.
Indeed, and that's where democracy breaks down, is where that trust breaks down between both the people, the populace, the electorate, and the politicians. Hat B, again, one of our regulars. Oh yes, all India's IT cells and commenters do everything they can to belittle and discredit the Khalistan referendum. Of course they do. They are scared of even acknowledging just how big the movement is. They keep repeating this old lie that it is this fringe movement, this handful of people. None of the RSS, BJP-controlled Indian channels show the reality. They continue to poison and, of course, manipulate the electorate. Yes, James, we do know this. There's nothing new here. I think we talk about this on a daily basis, is that the RSS, the BJP, they are trying to still spread this narrative, this failing narrative, that the Khalistan movement is a fringe movement. Yet, you only need to see the sea of flags that turn up at all the referenda around the world. You only need to see what happened to Amritpal Singh, the guy who was elected on a pro-Khalistan ticket with an overwhelming, unprecedented majority in the Punjab, to see the Khalistan movement is not a fringe movement. It is a mainstream movement. It is a popular movement, and it is most likely, without any shadow of a doubt, the most popular movement.
Absolutely. And when you hold a referendum and certain cities have attendance in the hundreds of thousands, if not, over 500,000, I think it might be a little more than a fringe movement, Angus.
Indeed, and this is why basically they are too afraid to hold the referendum in Punjab. Free Spirit follows on with all those Hindutvas to continue to suggest that the Sikhs should ask for part of Punjab and Pakistan to be part of Khalistan. Well, as you say, partition was crafted by Brahmanical forces, and then you talk about the betrayal. Oh, this word betrayal yet again. Yes, indeed, partition. How the Sikhs trusted the Brahmanical forces, but of course were unsurprisingly betrayed, and that is a price they are paying even to today. And it was a choice made by the Sikhs at the time. They were naive, as to use your word. They were naive of these Hindutva forces. Sadly, they were betrayed. But as you then continue to say, Khalistan can and should have the same policies as the European Union in terms of cross-border trade, visa-free travel, good neighbourly relations. Absolutely. And as we say, once Khalistan is established, and if it does indeed follow that strip of border between Pakistan and India, it will allow the free flow of goods and people between the other two nations, its neighbourly nations, and it will have amicable relations. But as Free Spirit says, you actually say to the west of Khalistan, in other words, Pakistan, there will be this friendly relationship. But what is it this point? Oh, sorry, it might be another comment. Actually, no, it is this comment. You say, so it will have friendly relations with Pakistan, but on the other side with India, you say because of this history that exists between essentially the Hindus and the Sikhs, that relations probably won't be quite as amicable, James. I think, in practical terms, I think relations on the surface at least will be amicable. There will be free trade and free movement of goods and services, but ultimately deep down beneath the layers there will be this historic memory, certainly of the Sikh people, who will never forget. They may ultimately forgive, but I don't think they will ever forget what was perpetrated by the Brahmins, particularly against the Sikh people in history.
And I think that the current geopolitical situation around the globe right now is an example of how not only there in India, but how world governments are still cautiously optimistic about trade agreements and their confidence in the reliability of India. And I think that's an important point. And that is why a lot of times, Angus, that we bring up the point of Khalistan being formed out of Punjab and being focused on the Indian territory first. And that's simply because it was the Brahmins and the government of India in 1947 that betrayed the Sikhs and didn't give them what they had promised and what they had committed to. So again, that is why I think it's essential to start or to use that as a starting point for the sovereign nation.
And indeed, I would actually point our audience to a podcast I did last year with an Austrian politician, a guy called Günther Fehlinger, who actually came out publicly and talked about the balkanization of India. And he said, actually, it would be a good thing for many reasons. And if you watch the interview I did with him, he explains why breaking India up into essentially a federal structure like the European Union would really work better for India. Firstly, because it then recognizes Khalistan and all the various other independent nations, sovereign nations, so they can rule themselves, but ultimately they all work together under a federal structure that actually then pushes the whole region, like the EU, into one united and happy, democratically happy political force and economic force, and therefore it can become a new superpower like the EU will. Well, is it a superpower now? That's arguable. But certainly India could be that superpower it is aspiring to if it follows that same structure. But it can only happen if it allows the balkanization of India, and then it can proceed quite happily moving forward. And then, James, happy to say that Critics Corner makes a very brief but very powerful return with Truth is Winner, who has actually been very vocal on our comments column over the last few days. And Truth is Winner says, these two paid buffoons, or even baboons, are making me laugh like hell, but they got the dollars. Well, I'm very happy to say, James, that if we are entertaining Truth is Winner, if we are indeed making him laugh, I'd say our job is done.
Exactly. You know, you get bored of laughing at yourself, so it's nice to have other people laughing along with you.
Indeed, absolutely. So do say, if we are entertaining you, Truth is Winner, tell more of your friends and colleagues to tune in as well. All are welcome, even if you're critics. We love our critics too. And we're always delighted to have a bit of banter, so get those criticisms in. If you want to throw it at us, we'll happily respond likewise. And final set is kicked off with SSB King, who says, Sing is king indeed, which I guess by default means Kaur is queen. So there you go. So full power to all the Singhs and indeed the Kaurs of this world, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And yeah, it is a beautiful thing when people can celebrate and share the comments like this, because it is.
Of course. Sing meaning lion, of course. I mean, what a wonderful epithet to be named as Sing, a lion, of course. And Knockdown says, always enjoy your perspectives on Sikh issues. Well, thank you for that lovely comment. We do actually get a lot of lovely comments. The key word here is perspectives. We did wonder when we first started this show, James and I, we said, well, what should we call it? Well, of course, perspectives just immediately came to mind because James and I, culturally from very different backgrounds, the Sikh community, it is our perspective which we hope gives a slightly different angle on all Sikh issues, because of course there are many Punjabi channels out there that do talk about Sikh issues. Most of them, if not all of them, talk in Punjabi, and they come from a very Sikh perspective. But I don't think there are many other channels like us that are just two middle-aged white guys just trying to give our relatively objective perspective, as we call it. Often we say, James, it is a journey of discovery and education. So hopefully our audience are enjoying, and as indeed Truth is Winner said, laughing at our clumsy education into the world of Sikhi.
Absolutely, Angus. And let's not forget that we do get it wrong on occasion. And whether it's Critics Corner or through emails, we appreciate being corrected when we are wrong. So again, it's, a learning curve for all of us.
Indeed. Navtar Dillon says, thanks us, but he referring to the Sikh riders, that motorbike group who were doing such great saver, such wonderful service to the community. It is compulsory for them, as you say. Indeed, it is obliged upon every Sikh to do saver, selfless service. And as you say, have a good day, guys. See you tomorrow. Well, of course, that comment was relevant at the time, but we, of course, won't see you until Monday. I will, of course, see you all being well, tomorrow with my podcast, which we did record. I have recorded it. With Bhajan Singh Binder. A fascinating topic as always. KPS Gill, the butcher of Punjab, which will be released tomorrow. So do keep an eye on that one. And then Ramandeep Joanda says, thanks for acknowledging the truth about the Sikh faith. Turbans apart, it's the brotherhood that Sikhi inspires across mankind by believing in good for humanity. Indeed, and this is something we always talk about, is that it is a brotherhood or a sisterhood. But it's basically human beings acknowledging the goodness of humanity, all the good parts of humanity. That is what Sikhi was established for. It was established to tear down the dreadful prison of the caste system. It was to spread and inspire mankind, the elements of goodness that is within all of us, or certainly most of us, James. And that is why Sikhi is so attractive and so powerful, and indeed so successful as a religion.
Absolutely, Angus. And it's all about shared education, shared commitments, and shared values. And that is a beautiful thing that the Sikh community comes together to help, regardless as to what faith you are, what background, it doesn't matter to them. They're there to lend a hand to anybody in need, but also to support each other. So it's a beautiful thing.
Indeed, and the final sign-off today goes to GS Guman, who sent a lovely sign-off. And I'm going to practice my Punjabi, because he said, or he or she, Dhanavada Bai Saba Jiud Vasat Raho Kusara Ho Abada Raho. Now, in my perfectly fluent Punjabi, that actually meant, apparently, thank you, brother. May you live long, may you be happy, may you be eternal. What a wonderful epithet. Thank you so much for that. And let me turn that back on you and indeed our audience, and let me wish you all the very same from James and I. I think you're aligned with me on that, James.
Absolutely, Angus.
And on that fantastic sign-off, thank you for that. We will draw perspectives to a close for another day and indeed another week. But please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. We do read everyone, and we do appreciate them all. There's been some fantastic comments, some really interesting discussions, let's call it. Not even arguments, discussions going on beneath some of the videos. So do keep those up and do keep them polite and civilised. But indeed, you can message us directly, don't forget, at message@satellite.com. Indeed, as many of you have been done so. Thank you to those who have done that. But that is it for another day and indeed another week. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.